Welcome to Design Tools for Wraps. We're going to find the best workflow you can find for designing and producing vehicle wraps. I'm Mark Rugen with Muto America, and I'm going to keep you in touch with the best design tools you can possibly have. We're going to talk about all kinds of things. We're going to use different software programs. We're going to talk about low resolution images and how to fix those. We're going to talk about all kinds of things that are going to help you do a better job of producing wraps. And here is one of the best parts of the whole presentation. We will have throughout our presentation exclusive interviews with Wrap Sesh, Slim Shetty, and Vinyl Vixen, and boy, you're going to enjoy it because they're going to tell you some stuff that happens in real life. But before we get started, let me ask a question to the Wrap Sesh folks. Does your designer ever have to face this kind of stuff? You know, poor quality, small images when designing a wrap? And do you ever need to like remove backgrounds or other objects from images before they're useful for a wrap that you folks are doing?
All the time. All the time. We get a lot of time we'll get like JPEGs from customers from their phones. They text us an image and they're like, can you print this? And I think you really have to educate your clients on what types of files they need and the differences, because they just don't quite understand. We get all sorts of crazy different kind of photos from clients that we have to work with, and one thing you really have to let them know is like something that's this big, on your phone is not going to look good when it's 12 feet long on a box truck. And when we do have images where we have to crop things out, a lot of times our designers are using Photoshop, Illustrator, as well as
Photo Scissor,
which Mark, you'll have to explain more about that. We learned that from his webinar series, so there's a lot of great tools to do that.
Yeah, so I mean, even just finding images can be an issue sometimes, can't it? So let's talk about that. Where are you going to find some of these images? Now, I always recommend this website because it's kind of a cool place to go to. Finding images, there's a lot of places you can buy them clearly, a lot of stock type style images, and sometimes those are appropriate. But every once in a while, you just need something quickly, and this is a great place to find free images. It's called Pexels.com, Pexels.com. And you can get a ton of images here. I mean, a ton of them. Let's take a look at the website itself, okay? We'll go over to Pexels here. This is what you get to see, okay? It's just it starts out just easy here. You just type in whatever topic you're looking for. So for instance, if I'm looking for an abstract background, I would type that in, and then it would give me a bunch of different suggestions here that I can scroll through. So these are all, by the way, what I like about it is they're all absolutely free for commercial use in any purpose you want to use them. So if you wanted a background from here, say you wanted this design right here, you just click on it, you get a closer look at it, and what's really cool is when you go to download it over here, you can download it in its original size, or you can actually customize the size. I've gotten downloads up to 6 foot. So if I wanted to use this in one of my designs, I literally can just download it. It's a JPEG file. You can open it up in just about every program and use it just about immediately. And I started thinking about this, and I said, I wonder what they have for tattoos. And I didn't, I typed in tattoo and it gave me a bunch of images, but it wasn't really what I was looking for. I was looking for like artwork that I could use in a wrap design, right? I didn't want to, I could use some of this, but I want to use like black and white artwork that I can use for maybe accenting or really building something off of it. And I found a pretty cool site, it's this one here. It's actually just called freedesignfile.com, and I saw this artwork and I said, man, that might make a kind of a cool part of a design for a wrap somewhere. But this is actually a Corel file. And while Flexi signs say, or some other programs might be able to open a Corel file, the issues. Sometimes you run into issues where the file just doesn't open right or whatever, right? Well, guess what? It's not a problem when using this file. You can just right click on it and copy it. And then if you go into Flexi, if you want to, And by the way, in a second, I want you to identify this person right here, right? But right now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paste that little graphic into this image right here. So I've got it, but it's a low-res bitmap. You can see this is pretty low-res. It's only 7.5 inches by 8 inches, 72 pixels per inch. Man, I wish I had that in vector format. So in this case then, what we're going to do is we're going to go back in. We're going to go to our enhanced corners again, and this time we're going to choose those same settings here. Click OK, and you'll see the difference. I'll click and delete the bitmap, and that just smooths out everything for me. That looks pretty good. So I could do a little bit of editing here if I wanted to. That's not part of our discussion, but that's a quick way. You can get a lot of artwork that way. You know, you can get a lot of artwork that's absolutely free. Sometimes you're going to have to trace it to bring it into your image, sometimes not, but that's up to you to do whatever you'd like to do there, right? Another issue that we face, and that's what I'm trying to do here, is let's talk about this guy. I don't know if anybody recognizes this person. If you do, then kudos to you, and I'll give you a hint, Roll Tide. Just kidding. I don't want to offend anybody, but you know, it is. I do live in Alabama, so that's the way it goes. Anyway, so yeah, this is a little picture of Nick Saban here, but you can see it's all pixelated. And if I wanted to use this in some sort of graphic or on a vehicle wrap, it would not be acceptable to have that pixelization there, and that's really what I'm talking about. So what I might want to do is take advantage of this program. This is called Photo Zoom, and it's a very, very good program. I want to go back and talk about this because we did talk about the finding the images, but that Photo Zoom is very, very, very handy. I want you to just write that down. You can have this presentation. I'll be sure and make it available to you. You'll be able to watch this presentation again over and over for the next 2 weeks. But this is a good program to use and take advantage of. Let me explain why. This image was only 6 by 10, 72 pixels per inch. So in other words, it's a very low resolution image, okay? And let's say I need to make that image much bigger. I want to make this thing maybe 4 feet wide, you know, 48 inches wide. You can see what's happening there. I mean, look at this. This would really pixelize and cause a major issue, right? And I'm going to drop back a little bit so you can see a little better issue of that. Look what this program does quickly. I haven't even changed any settings yet. These are default settings. Let me split the screen for you because you'll see on one side, this is the original image over on the right, and then this is the redone image on the left. And look, without even really setting anything, it automatically cleaned it up. I mean, I could just save it now and it's ready to go. It's a 4 foot by 6 foot image now. Remember we started out maybe 4 inches by 6 inches? Now it's 4 foot by 6 foot. I mean, you don't get this kind of quickness and resolution from any other program. This is a very good one to have. All kinds of settings in here. This is what you want to use when you're dealing with these kinds of issues with images, okay? And then lastly, let's talk about that removing backgrounds. We're going to talk about 2 programs, Photo Scissors and InPaint, and they really do a good job of working here. Let's start with Photo Scissors. This is a program that allows you to remove backgrounds, no matter how complicated they are, even if there's hair, all kinds of stuff, right? It's very easy to use. And let's just open it up. I'm going to open up this little guy right here. Watch this. This is a truck in the background back here, right? This is just a truck with a house behind it. I didn't even do anything. And it selected the truck. It identified the truck as the primary object. Of course, you can set your own if you wanted to do, you know, the whatever part of this image, but it did a really good job of selecting the entire truck automatically. I mean, I like this kind of program that helps me. It's like having a worker that knows what he's doing, right? So this is a good thing to have available for you. And again, you can choose what you want to actually eliminate in here. You just mark what you want to keep, and then it'll keep that piece right there, right? Or you can actually erase that or eliminate it. It's very, very simple to use, works on a lot of different kinds of artwork. Very cool program. The other one's real similar to it. It's called InPaint. It almost looks like the same layout because it's the same company that makes it. Let's go in here and take this, and we're actually going to choose this beach scene here. And in this case, what happens is sometimes you get that artwork where maybe you want this beach scene, but you don't want the individual in it, but you'd like to have the mountain in the background. But you can see her arms are over the mountain, there's a shadow and so forth. This is super easy to use too. Basically, in Paint, you just paint the area you want to get rid of. So let's just choose her and the shadow, okay? And it's pretty quick, you know, just fill in the areas that you want to eliminate. That's really all you're doing here. So I'm going to take her arm there, leave that little space in between her arms, right? And just tell this program, that's the part I want to get rid of. I'm going to hit the green dot on the left side, and it's going to show me what it's going to use to substitute for that part. And that looks fine. And I'm going to say, okay, erase it. And within a couple of seconds, you know what? She's gone, the mountain's rebuilt, the sand's rebuilt, the ocean's rebuilt. It looks natural. And hey, if I don't want the mountain in there, I'll do it one more time. I don't want the mountain. To go to my little red dot here and just say, hey, you know what? I've decided I don't want that part. Just highlight what you don't want, click the green, and you can decide if you want to use that. It's pretty intelligent. It knows what you're trying to replace, so it kind of knows what the content is that you want to substitute. You hit erase up here at the top, and now the mountain's gone. And you can clean it up a little more, a little less, whatever you want to do. This is a very powerful tool, and I want to encourage you to use these tools when you're working with this program. Very, very advantageous to work in this way, right? Very advantageous. Now let's go back and let's move on to the next slide here. I think you'll really appreciate it, right? I want to ask a question to the Rap Sesh folks again. Have you guys ever had to like match color really carefully? You know, I mean, like really get the red right or the blue, or because it's a corporate color, and was that difficult to do? I mean, was it time consuming, especially if you're trying to print that color? Let's see what they have to say about that.
Yes, we do. We actually just had to do that last week on a car. We were trying to match the paint with the print.
Yeah. So we have a couple ways we go about doing that. If you're working with a really professional company, they usually have like a branding guide, which kind of like explains their Pantone colors and like what sort of color schemes you're allowed to use with their logos, things like that. But most businesses don't have that.
Smaller businesses don't usually.
Yeah, we try to keep everybody limited to like Pantone colors because that's like the most universal way to do it, I think. But oftentimes when they want us to match something, we have a couple ways we can do that. We'll sometimes print like a sample swatch.
Usually have like, say you want green, we'll print all the greens, and then you go through and pretty much match the right green.
Right, so there was a car we just did where we were trying to print some green to match the green paint on a green Challenger.
Mm-hmm.
So we printed probably 30 or 40 different greens and different hues and saturations and stuff, and then we put that out on the vehicle to compare to the paint. So that's a really good way to match when you're doing prints. And then another tool that we just got, I learned this in Mark Rugen's Flexi webinar training, is called Color Muse.
It's pretty cool.
Basically, it's this like little contraption, and you take a photo of something, and it'll like break down the color values, the Pantone, like everything. So I'll let Mark dive into that a little more.
Yeah, it's like a little app on your phone. It's pretty nice.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I know that color matching can be difficult. It's an issue that is always something that we gotta try to handle, right? So let's talk about color matching for just a second. And what I want to do is I want to show you a couple of things. First of all, I'm going to show you a video on a piece of equipment that I think you're going to have in your shop. You know, it's just so easy to use. It was actually developed for the paint business to match wall color paints. It's an inexpensive piece of equipment. When I say that, I mean like $59 or $49. It doesn't go, you can almost get them in any paint shop. It's called the Color Muse. Let me show you a video and how it works, and I'll show you why that's important for us in our wrap business.
Hey, Mark Rugen with Muto America here. We're going to test out a new device that I think you'll really appreciate. the Color Muse. This is a device that's used to measure color. It's about $59. You can get it about anywhere. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a brochure, and you can see the little corner up here where you have the nice blue. I'm going to take this instrument and I'm going to measure that. Then we're going to print it on some white vinyl and compare it so that you can match colors. I think this is going to be a great new addition to your workflow. Let me show you how it works. All right, well, the Color Muse here comes with a software or an app that goes on your iPhone and allows you to connect it using your Bluetooth device. So we're going to just click Connect Device. I'm going to press the top of the button here to connect it. Perfect. Now it's asking me to calibrate it, so we just set it down somewhere. There's a white cap goes on the top right there. Just click Calibrate. And once it's calibrated, it's done. So at this point then, I'm going to take that little device off right there, set it down on my measuring point right here, and then again what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to measure this, okay? So what we can do at this point then is actually scan it in. Alright, so let's go back, and what it will do is it'll actually scan that color. Now it's going to give you these colors in paint colors, but there's a little inspect button over here to the left, and it actually shows you those numbers in RGB. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to input those numbers. I'm going to draw a square in Flexi. I'm going to actually print it on my vinyl, and then right next to this there's a sample, scan sample, and we're going to compare what our print looks like to our actual color that we just measured on this brochure. Alright, so I printed this out. I just drew a square in Flexi, made a couple of adjustments, and I'll show you how to do those in the software. But what I'm going to do now is measure these two. I've got the brochure here compared to that blue. You can see it's a pretty close match to start with. But I'm also going to place my Muse on the actual printed part. I'm going to hit scan, and it actually says here I have a delta of 1.93, which it indicates with a green strip, and that actually shows that there's a minimal difference between those two. In other words, it's a good match. If it were not, if it were close, it might have an orange or a yellow strip. If it were not even close, it would give you a red strip indicating you need to make some adjustments. So you can make those adjustments in Flexi, and you can actually match something that you measure with the Color Muse. I think this is a great tool for you to use, and I would highly recommend it to you. You can just go out and look for it. Just type in Color Muse in Google, and you'll find it. It's about $49. I think you'll love it. $49, $59, something like that.
Alright, so I've scanned the brochure color with the Color Muse, and it gives me some RGB values when I click on Inspect. So what I'm going to do here then is I'm actually going to input those values in Flex. I just drew a square here. I'm just going to type in my values. It says it's 99.3 by 184.1 by 217.9, and that's the actual color of the brochure. Now what I'll do in this case is I'll go ahead and print this. So we're going to go to wide format printer, just click on that. I'm going to use a Muse 1324X to print this. Just draw a box that's big enough to measure. It doesn't have to be this big. I'm just showing this so you can see it properly. And set up all your settings. You know, make sure that you're setting up the right profile and so forth for this particular media, right? So once we have those set up, we send that job. All right, and in my production manager here, you can actually see that job is loading up. What I do is I would actually print that job. Now once you print that and measure it, if it doesn't match closely, in other words, if your delta E is say 4 or 5 or something like that, what you want to do is make some adjustments. So you would go back into your Flexi here, and what I recommend you do is don't adjust the RGB values. Go in here and change this to HSV right here. And in my case, what I had to do was I increased each of these by about 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's what I did. You may have to change yours a little bit differently, but about 5 clicks up or down on each of these values here tends to get you right in that range of colors that you're going to want to print. And so I reprinted this,
and as you can see, it matched extremely well. So the Color Muse is really kind of a cool tool. I highly recommend it to you.
Hey, Rapsesh, let me ask you another question. How often does a customer ask you for like last minute changes?
Pretty often. I mean, not all the time, but every once in a while someone comes in and, you know, they think they know what they have, or they think they
Know what they want.
know what they want, but then they, you know, once they see it, they're like, oh, I want to change this here and here, but, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I think when we're in the rendering process, going back and forth, there's always like last minutes, oh, can you add this, can you do that?
Yeah.
But basically, whenever the rendering's approved, like that's when the customer signs off on it and responds approved to us. After that point, you don't make any changes.
Then it's printing.
Because then the designer has already sent us the print files and we're already in the process of printing. So once we get to that point and we collect the print deposit, you can't make any additions or changes to the current design. You can only add over the top of it.
Yeah, or else it would have to be reprinted at that point.
Yeah, and that's the best way for us as a business to just avoid costly mistakes.
But usually our designers, you know, you have 2 or 3 you know, you can go through and change things a couple times.
We go through like 4 or 5 alterations before we have a
alterations.
finalized design. But once it's approved, you can't change anything else.
Nuh-uh.
Nuh-uh, not today.
Exactly. So, you know, I mean, customers change their mind all the time. I mean, it just seems like they're always doing that. So we can vectorize something in, you know, whatever program we're using and get a nice clean piece of artwork. And then they're like, oh, change the color and can you remove this part or that part? Or maybe we've gone through the extent of making a really cool design and they're like, well, you know, we just changed our name and it's, you know, a different name, or, you know, I don't know. It could be anything. It could be literally anything. Well, what I want to do is I want to take you through an example of how Flexi, for instance, can save you a lot of time, okay? There was a guy out there some time ago that did a bunch of templates. And let's just, his name was Bill Bergen. And Bill, if you're listening, hey, what's going on? Anyway, so this is a couple of his templates, okay? And here's the magic of using Flexi that I really like, okay? First of all, these are all just vector artwork. That's all they are, really, you know? Different fills in it and so forth. What if somebody says, oh, well, you know what? It's Muto Pharmacy or it's Rapsesh Pharmacy now. You know, in a lot of programs, you'd have to change everything. In Flexi, you can just highlight lettering like this, right? And just type in stuff. And it'll just redo it, right? I mean, you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to redo the fill or anything like that. You can just fix things, right? And even like if this one has a distortion on it, a fill, an outline, it's got a shadow behind it, it's got all kinds of things in it. You can still highlight that lettering right there, right? And just type in some new lettering. And it just automatically fixes it. So the idea is that all the parts, when you design something in Flexi, all the parts remain what they originally were. So if it was a star, it's still a star. If it was an outline, it stays an outline. If it was a text, it stays text. So you can always make changes, right? You can always make changes to anything that you highlight or that you need to make changes to. That's the real power of editing. It really comes from the way that Flexi was originally written, and it makes it easy for you to be able to make changes quickly, right? Pretty simple, huh? This is the power of using something called smart objects, and that's something that's very important when you're doing editing. So that's why I recommend this program. There are others that are similar to it. You know, SignLab can do some things like that and so forth, but it's one of the reasons why Muto actually includes the Flexi software with most of their printers, because it has so much design power. So think about that when you're thinking about getting a printer or design software. You got to look at it from the standpoint that customers are going to ask for changes. How quickly can you get those done? Because time is money. Time is money. Cool. So let me ask you guys a question again. Do you use vehicle templates or actual vehicle photos when designing, or do you use them both? I mean, how do you take advantage of those templates?
So if we're doing like fleets or like business vehicles or like partial designs, things like that, that's kind of simple, we'll typically use a template. When we do really custom projects, custom prints, we're usually using a combination of both custom and a template. So a lot of times our designers will start with a base template, or if it's a really custom car, they can create a rendering based off of a photo. So they create a template by hand. And then with us, we want everything to be dialed in perfect. So when we're doing custom cars, we actually measure every single panel, and we'll measure the exact measurements of the panel, and then we'll also list what we want the print panel with bleed.
Yeah.
So our designer knows, here's the exact size, here's what they want, and that's the best way to avoid any issues with templating. So we take that extra step just to make sure it's exactly how we want, because we want to just do it right the first time.
Yeah, and you know, some, like you said, some cars are so custom that there's no templates for them.
There is no template, yeah.
So you have to create one.
And I think doing those custom templates off of photos, they look a lot more realistic and kind of sell a job better to a high-end client.
A lot of customers really like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. All right, so what we want to do is we want to talk about these templates, okay? Now you can certainly purchase templates, you can use these vector templates, you can use the bad rap style templates. I'm going to show you how to use an actual vehicle photograph, okay? So let's take a look. I'm going to take an image, and let's add an image to an actual vehicle photograph that you might take of your customer's truck or whatever it is you're working on, okay? So let me switch over to Flexi here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up just a simple back end of a truck here. Now I made sure that my design editor was on, and I'm going to make sure that you turn that on because it makes it a little easier to understand, okay? So when you open a file like I just did, it just assigns it to layer 1. We're going to rename layer 1 design layer, okay? That's going to be my design layer right there. Let's create a new layer. You can just do that by clicking this little icon right here. And let's name our new layer masking layer. All right, be sure you learn how to spell, not like me. Masking layer. There we go. Okay, there's my masking layer. So those are just layers. Now if I go over to my objects here, you'll see I have a bitmap. That's the only thing I have on the screen right now. Okay, that's the only thing I have on the screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on my graphic here, my bitmap, and I'm going to copy it. And then I'm going to click on my masking layer, and I'm going to right click again here. And again, on the masking layer, right? Make sure you're on the masking layer. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to say paste over. Now it doesn't look like anything happened, but what actually happened was the same bitmap, a copy of this truck, is on both layers. That's very, very important. Okay, now go to your layers again, and on the design layer, I'm going to click this little pencil, and that's going to say don't edit the bottom one. You know, just make that stable, don't edit it, okay? Go to your masking layer, and at this point, it's a very simple process. Really, I'm going to zoom up a little bit on the tailgate here, because that's what we're working on. And I'm going to minimize this a little bit. All we want to do is put a line around the parts that we want and don't want. So in other words, if I take my little digitizer pen here and I just start clicking here, and I'm going to go right up to the edge of the seam there, okay? And you would, you know, if you're doing this in truth, you would probably take your time and do this really accurately, okay? But clearly we're limited on time here, you know, so what I'm basically doing is I just did the back of that part of the tailgate, right? And I did this bright red color because I want to actually click down here so that it's just showing me my red line, but I can still see it in Flexi. That's the whole point, okay? And so like on this Ford logo here, I might take an oval and maybe I'll do this and just go right around that logo. And again, you can resize it, shrink it, move it, you know, make sure that, oops, that always happens to me. Make sure that you place it in the right spot, you know, that way you can you can even use your arrow tools here on your keyboard, you know, to kind of just manipulate it, make sure it's in the right spot, right? I might use a rectangle and just put it around the edge here, maybe another one over here around the little Flex Fuel logo. I'm going to use a rectangle here, even though I probably would get more accurate on that part. And then I'm going to do my digitizer tool again, and I'm going to zoom up on this side here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start like right next to, I want to make this seam, that black seam that you see there. So I made sure that the line is kind of on the other side here. And then I'm going to go around the light, okay? And again, I'm just hurrying here so that we can get all this in our hour's time here, right? So basically what I'm doing here is I'm making sure that, you know, I got this kind of thing, right? Okay, and then let's go over to the other side and do the same thing. Oops, too far. Problem. So we're going to do the same thing here, straight down, over to the right, up and around, come up here, over. We're just going to estimate where the end of the truck is, close that up. And then basically I have the following, okay? So I got all this stuff. Here's the real trick. I'm still on my masking layer. Make sure you're still on your masking layer. I'm gonna right click on this big giant red piece here. It could be any part. Could be the small part here if you want. That doesn't matter, as long as you pick something that's red. You wanna do everything in the same color. Right click, and I'm actually gonna say select everything that's the same color. See how it's selected all the ovals and stuff? Then right click on it again. We're going to combine it in compound, and you'll see all those parts that I don't want wrapped are now showing through. And here's the real magic. I love this part. Go up to the bitmap and say convert that shape into a marquee. And basically that's just like selecting the area here. Then I'm going to right click and say let's invert that marquee. So now even the outside image, everything except the area that I want to mask has been selected, and I'm going to go to bitmap and I'm going to say convert the marquee to a shape. So, you know, that's kind of, I did this part and then I reversed it so that everything else is selected. And because I have that pencil on the design layer and I'm also working in the masking layer, I can now take everything on the screen, everything, right click and mask it, and boom, just like that, right? So now let's unclick the design layer here, because we want to click on the design layer, and I want to show you something. I'm gonna go File and Import, and I'm going to import a little logo here. Remember, I'm in Alabama, so we're going to put this little thing here. I want you to look in the Objects tab here. See how that bitmap? This is the bitmap that I entered, but you can't see it on. Oh, look what's happening. What's going on here? It's actually showing up right on the tailgate of the truck, already pre-masked. Right? So you can play with this and resize it and move it around, place it wherever you want till you get the look that you're after. It's as if you're designing right on the truck. I'm going to actually make this a little bigger so you can see it. Pretty cool, huh? As a matter of fact, you know, it's got a lot of extra down here that I don't need right now. I'm going to take my tool. I'm right on the bitmap. This is the one I'm working on. I'm actually going to take my cropping tool up here, and I'm going to say crop it like around this area right here. Just crop it in there. And that way, when I show the customer, it doesn't hang down on the bottom of the truck. Here's another cool thing. I mean, we're full of cool things today. You know, I just love it. So here's my little bitmap here. Let's zoom in on this for a minute. Let me show you something. I'm going to zoom in on it for a minute. You can't really see the seams and the tailgate and everything. I mean, it looks okay, but look, you've got the bitmap selected, right? Go to the effects menu and choose lens and transparent, and you can see the actual stuff showing through, and just don't make it too much. You know, you want to make it enough that, you know, you can see those seams in there. As a matter of fact, you could even take the truck itself if you wanted to. This is the truck itself here. And if you wanted to, you could go to the bitmap menu here and maybe use some of these filters like brightness and contrast or whatever here to kind of change the look of the actual truck itself. You know, like make it a little darker, maybe, with a little more brightness in here or a little less brightness. Honestly, you could play around with this and enhance those seams a little bit. When you click OK, you'll see them a little better on your image in here, right? You won't have to do as much of a transparent lens on that, right? So I could literally click here and just say in that lens, let's make it a little less transparent, right? So you can really see that, and it really gives you the impression of, hey, that looks just like it's going to look when I do it for you on that truck, you know. The image is obviously going to be a little brighter because you're going to print it nice and bright on your brand new Muto printer. So here we did, in relatively short period of time, we used an actual photo right inside Flexi here to manipulate this. And it all had to do with creating these layers and then just moving things around. And here's the really sweet part too. You know, if you type some other stuff in here, right? I'm just going to type in some lettering. All right, so I just typed in some lettering here. Where is that lettering? Why is it, you know, if I put it over the top of the truck here, well, look at that, it's showing up also. And you can manipulate that lettering all day long just as if it was never masked in or anything, right? You could just set this over on the side here, you could resize it, you could do all kinds of things to try to, you know, show your customer, here's what it's gonna look like, man. When I finish this on here, right? Put it wherever you want, kind of show them what it's gonna look like. The idea is it's really cool. All you got to do is just work on your design layer there, make sure that's activated, and put everything in the design layer, and then you can just start designing right on the back of the vehicle, just like you were designing on a page blank or a media. Really, really cool. I think that's a great way to show off to your customer exactly how you would design on a vehicle. We're going to talk about production a little bit, because let's say we got all these design tools and we've, you know, doubled the speed that we can fix something and figure it out now, right? I hope y'all are feeling that way. Anyway, then we get it to design that like we want, and I'm going to go in my Flexi product here because I had this design that we created here. But I notice it, if I click on the picture here, the picture is only 10 inches wide by 6 3/4 tall. And of course, that's not even close to the actual size of the image. So how do we scale that up so that it's actually the size of the actual vehicle itself? Well, it would have been easy in this case because we could have actually measured, and let me zoom in so you can see this. We could have actually measured, say, from that seam to the right-hand side seam, right? I mean, that would be a great measurement. So if I were to take, say, something like a rectangle and just really drop it accurately right in here, you know, just right exactly where the seam is right there. That rectangle is only 6.1 inches by a little bit tall. So we clearly don't know what the actual, well, we do know what the actual size is, but we don't know how big the truck should be yet. Let's say we measured that and we came up with 48 inches or whatever number you come up with. We're going to say 48 inches just for the sake of making this easy to understand. So instead of 6 inches, it should be 48 inches. Here's a really cool tool. That red stripe that I have on there, I'm going to go to the Arrange menu and I'm going to choose something called Resize. And basically, I'm going to tell Flexi that rectangle should be not 6 inches, but 48 inches. So make it bigger, make it 48 inches, and then apply that scale to everything I see on my screen right now. So I'm going to hit Apply to All, and then check mark, and then let's go back. And now that stripe is 48 inches, which means that this whole truck now is life size. In other words, if I get in here and I choose my lettering, for instance, right? I know that I'm going to need to cut that if I'm going to do it out of vinyl. I cut vinyl, I know I need to cut that about 16 inches by 8.5 inches tall. See, because that's the exact size it would fit truly on the image here. Or if I click on my bitmap, right, I know that bitmap needs to be 55 inches across by 24 inches tall. That it's life size now, so I can actually print it or cut this the size that I need to get the job done in reality. So the key there was when you're doing this, take a good measurement. The longer the measurement, the better. And then when you're going to apply this, when you're actually going to do this, you know, do a little zooming. You know, come up nice and tight and make sure that when you draw this, that you're drawing it in a starting point that's exactly where you wanted to draw it, right? And then when you go over to the right-hand side here, you know, when you're going to resize this thing, make sure that you get it exactly in the right ending point there. So don't just guess, get as accurate as you can. You don't want to be over or under. Get in there as accurate as you can according to the measurement that you took, and then you'll see that it's super good measurement, and you'll be able to resize thing within a no more than a 1/4 inch mistake, maybe an 1/8 inch if you do it really carefully. So keep that in mind when you're doing resizing in this product as well. And finally, let's talk about paneling a little bit, okay? Now I realize in this example, we probably would print this entire piece right here. Well, how would you do that anyway? Well, let me explain a couple of things. I'm going to click on that bitmap, okay? I'm going to hold my control key down, because remember, we resize this to actual size, so it's the size we need. Hold my control key down. That's going to let me make a copy of this. Now you notice it's going anywhere. I'm going to hold my shift key down, and it will force it to be exactly lined up with the one above it. Okay, now why would I do something like that? Let's take that lens off of there too. Why would I do something like that? Okay, if I needed to actually panel this, so in other words, if this was the side of the vehicle, or maybe I was just doing the truck bed, and then I was going to do another piece for the door and another one for the hood and so forth, okay, I may have to panel this. This is the easiest way. I just made a copy. I put it right underneath the actual image itself. And I can take these guidelines, and we're going to pretend that we're actually going to stop it right at that seam there, okay? And we're going to give a little bit of overlap. So I'm going to move that over a little bit and move this over right here. We're just pretending now. I know you probably wouldn't do it this way, but see what I'm saying? Let's say we wanted to print everything right up to that guideline right there. Well, because it's lined up with the one on the top, it makes it easy. Once I pull those guidelines out, I can just click a rectangle. I can start up here at the top, and it literally snaps to my guidelines, right? So I'm going to snap those to the guidelines right there. I'm going to take those two then, just select both of those, right click and mask it, and that's the piece I need to print. So what I did was I literally created my panel in Flexi instead of in the production manager, where it can be a little bit more difficult. So this gives me better control, and if I have to repeat a panel, I've got an exact size already pre-done. I can save this file just like this, so that the next time I need to print it, or if I need to do a series of them on different trucks, the same truck in a fleet or something like that, I've got all my panels set up, man, right? So again, all I did was I just clicked on the image, held the control key down and the shift key. Once I start moving it, hold the shift key down. That brings down an exact copy of the image, okay? And then what I did was I just pulled the guidelines over, drew a rectangle over it, mask it, boom, you're done. I mean, that is about as easy as it gets, man. I can't tell you how easy it is when you know how to use your software and all the tools along with your printer. At this point, I could take that panel, I could click my wide format printer, send it right over, and if I need to, we can rotate things, we can do whatever we need to do at this point to create the graphics that we need, right? So if I'm going to print this on my 1641, I take a look at it and say, hey man, what's the best way to print this? Looks like it's going to fit that way better, all right? And let's say we're going to do a bunch of jobs, so I need 4 copies of it. All the copies are exactly the same size. The Flexi and Muto product make it easy to do these vehicle wraps, I'm telling you. So that brings me to my last question. Would you guys recommend training through the Muto webinars we're doing and hands-on? And how has the Muto printer you've owned helped you succeed in the business? Just give us an overall view really quickly here. I just want everybody to understand how valuable this really is.
Yes.
Definitely.
She's done a lot of training with the Flexi program.
The
and
Muto webinars.
Yep,
so
Muto
like,
webinar.
if you guys watch our stuff, I always admit I'm a bad Asian when it comes to technology. It's like, we don't vibe well, and I'm an installer first, and I'm a business owner. So like the last thing I want to do is be learning how to do a completely different skill set of designing. Like I've just never been really good with the computer or been trained in that area. Now with our printer, we've had it for a year, and we've been trained by Fellers and Muto on the Flexi program, and that is really, really easy to use. But those webinar series, I've done 2 classes with Mark Rugen on Flexi itself, and we learned so many awesome like tips and tricks that we've already like utilized.
Yeah.
I learned how to do like QR codes and just all sorts of tricks that I never even knew on Flexi. So I really, really recommend that you guys sign up. Mark Rugen's an amazing teacher. He talks about, you know, the Photoshop stuff and Flexi and sending prints, and just covers a really huge variety of subjects.
Yeah. I mean, every time she would watch a video, she's like, "Oh my gosh,
like,
I could have used that."
I didn't know how to do that. And in fact, when we had the last training with him, it was a full week of classes, so 5 webinar series, was when we hired our first in-house designer. So we work with like 6 different designers across the world. This is our first in-house designer that we have, and she's never used Flexi before, and she needs to know how to use Flexi to work with our print, you know, our printer and everything else that we have in here as far as equipment. So we actually let her watch that webinar series as well, and it was like a really good introductory course for her. So we used it as training for our employees.
Definitely. So the printer, I mean, I can't say...
Game changer!
Yeah, I mean, I can't say enough good things about the printer because it has literally opened up so many new doors for us. Like, you know, before we had this, we were only limited to a certain amount of things we could do.
I mean, we did a lot of color change, and we were subbing out designs and prints.
And that takes time, you know.
It takes more time. You don't make as much money when you have to sub out the whole job, and we just started getting a lot more requests for custom, and so the printer came at the perfect time for us, and you know, it's really expanded our client base. We do a lot of like wholesale bulk decal orders, and we work with a lot more businesses on small fleets.
Yeah.
2, you're basically printing profits. You're printing money if this thing's moving. So you got to keep it moving, and you make a lot more when you're printing material versus just buying like a color film.
It also creates jobs.
Creating jobs. We've created 2 full-time jobs alone just between needing a designer and somebody doing print production like at all times in our shop. So it's definitely a game changer. It's totally changed, you know, everything about our shop, and we've done so many more custom projects in the past year since we've had it, and we've hired people, and
it gives your shop that much more freedom to do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, we can print stuff for ourselves now, and now we're kind of designing. I kind of dabble in it, you know, and we have our in-house designer now, so nothing but blessings when you have a printer.
All right, thank you very much, Rap Sesh. We appreciate your input in all this. Special shout out to you and all of your followers. Just want to finally say thank you everyone for watching this. There was a lot to comprehend, and we only had an hour. Take it upon yourself to get more training from a authorized dealer of ours. Learn how to use the software, investigate our printers. Truly, it has made them Rap Sesh successful. It can make you successful too. This is Mark Rugen with Muto. Thank you, NBM, for inviting us, and thanks, folks, for watching.